Welcome to the Black Files Society, the place where we examine the cases that don't quite close, the stories that don't sit right, and the details that tend to disappear over time. Tonight, we're going out into open water, far from shore, far from help, far from anything that could interrupt what was already set in motion. Because somewhere in the South Pacific, a man who walked away from fame walked into something no one has ever been able to fully explain. The boat drifts just off the coast of Tahiti. Quiet. Almost too quiet. There's a stillness to it, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels off. The kind of quiet that makes you pause, listen, wait, even when there's nothing there. No wind pushing the sail, no sudden movement, just a slow, steady rise and fall against the water. No signs of a struggle, no visible damage, nothing that immediately suggests something went wrong. But no one is there. No voices, no footsteps, no movement below deck. Just absence, stretching across a space that should feel lived in. 4 people had boarded that boat. Only one came back. Before the headlines, before the speculation, there was a man who had already stepped off the track most people are trying to get onto. Bison Dele had done what many spend a lifetime chasing. An NBA champion. Financially secure, established. The kind of life that, from the outside, looks complete. And then, he left it. Not suddenly, not recklessly, not in a way that suggested something had gone wrong. He chose it, slowly, deliberately. He stepped away from the expectations, from the noise, from the version of himself that everyone else recognized. He changed his name, reshaped how he moved through the world, and started building something quieter. Something that didn't demand attention. That decision matters, more than it might seem, because it tells you something about direction, about control. People who knew him described someone thoughtful, independent, someone who didn't need to be seen to feel complete. He wasn't chasing anything anymore. If anything, he was moving away, towards something calmer, something slower, something that felt real. And there's no indication anywhere that he intended to disappear. Which is why, when contact stopped, it didn't just raise concern, it created a question that didn't have an easy answer. By July of 2002, he was in the South Pacific, near Tahiti, aboard a catamaran. A small space, surrounded by distance, in every direction. No quick exits, no outside perspective, no one stepping in if something shifted. With him were 3 people. His girlfriend, a steady presence, a boat captain, experienced, professional, someone used to unpredictable conditions, and his brother. From a distance, it looks like a retreat. Open water, no pressure, no schedule, no expectations. But isolation has a way of changing things. Out there, there's no pause button, no stepping away to cool off, no resetting the tone once something starts to turn. Everything stays in the same space, and at some point, something shifted. We don't have a confirmed sequence of events. No verified timeline of exactly what happened on that boat. No single moment where everything clearly breaks. What investigators believe is that there was a confrontation. Something that started small and escalated. And escalation in a confined space doesn't take much. A comment, a look, a tone that lands wrong. And then it builds. Slowly at first, then all at once. And once it crosses a certain point, there's nowhere to step away to. What we do know is what came after. Days later, the boat returned to Tahiti. Not urgently, not dramatically, just returned, and there was only one person on board, Miles Dabord. At that stage, nothing had been officially reported. No distress call, no missing persons alert, no indication from him that anything had gone wrong. And that's where behavior starts to matter. Because when there's no physical evidence, behavior becomes the evidence. He didn't go to authorities. He didn't report an incident. He didn't explain the absence. Instead, he moved forward. Handling logistics, managing the boat, conducting transactions. moving through the situation as if it were normal. And that's where things begin to feel off. Because eventually, investigators uncovered something that changed everything. He had started using Dele's identity, not occasionally, not by mistake, but deliberately. Financial records showed activity, withdrawals, purchases, movement of money, all under Dele's name. But when you look closer, something doesn't match. The patterns feel different. The decisions don't line up. It doesn't look like Dele. It looks like someone else trying to be him. And that changes everything. Because now, it's not just absence, it's substitution. If Dele were alive, there would be contact, a call, a message, something direct. Instead, there's movement without confirmation, presence without proof. By the time family members reported him missing, weeks had already passed. And time, in cases like this, matters more than anything. Because time allows for distance, for cleanup, for shaping a version of events before anyone starts asking questions. Authorities began reconstructing what they could, taking fragments and trying to form something whole. But in this case, the gaps were too large. No bodies, no confirmed crime scene, no physical evidence tied to a specific act. Just behavior, records, timelines, and one person who had been there. Eventually, that person returned to the United States. He was located in Phoenix and brought in for questioning. The interrogation didn't produce clarity. It didn't give a clean timeline. It didn't resolve the inconsistencies. What it produced was a shifting narrative. At times, he described a confrontation, an argument that escalated. He suggested self-defense, that his brother had attacked him, that things got out of control. But the details didn't hold steady. They shifted, they adjusted, they changed. Investigators pressed for clarity. The story didn't tighten, it loosened. And that's the problem. Because when the only account you have keeps changing, you're not confirming the truth, you're chasing it. Investigators also examined the boat. What they found wasn't definitive. There were signs it had been cleaned, maintained, handled carefully, which suggests something important. There was time after whatever happened. Time to think, time to act, time to remove what didn't belong. And the environment matters, because at sea, evidence doesn't stay. It doesn't linger. It doesn't wait to be found. It disappears. By this point, investigators had a theory, not proven, but supported, that something violent had occurred, that multiple people had died, and that the only person left was responsible in some way. But theory isn't enough. They needed more clarity, more confirmation, more time. They didn't get it. Not long after the interrogation began, everything changed. He was found in medical distress, a large dose of insulin, something he had access to, something he understood. This wasn't confusion, this wasn't accidental. He was hospitalized, he never regained consciousness, and within days, he died. And just like that, the only person who could explain what happened was gone. With his death, the investigation shifted. No trial, no cross-examination, no ability to challenge the story. And without bodies, without physical evidence, there was no path forward. The case didn't end with answers. It ended with limits. Most investigators believe they understand the outline, but belief isn't confirmation. 3 people vanished. No remains were recovered. No definitive sequence was established. And the only person who could fill in those gaps is no longer here. Which leaves the case in a strange place. Not unsolved, but not fully resolved. And that brings it back to the beginning. A man who stepped away from one life to build another. Who chose distance, clarity, control, and who disappeared not in chaos, but in a place he chose. Somewhere in the Pacific, beyond reach, beyond evidence, the missing pieces still exist. Unseen, unconfirmed, and the version we're left with is incomplete. Because the question isn't just what happened on that boat, it's whether the truth was ever fully told at all. If you found this case unsettling, that's because it is. If you want more cases like this, follow the Black Files Society. Until next time, stay curious and trust what doesn't feel